Hello, my name's Caroline, but today you're going to know me as Cleo, the muse of history. There's this strange urge we have as humans. We're always pushing boundaries and testing things, as weird as they may seem. Neapolitan ice cream seems pretty mild, but the small victory made us brave, and we started venturing into more wild ideas. Chicken and waffles, cheese on apple pie, peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. Everyone likes their own thing, and I'm not here to knock it. That's not what this channel is. But it's an example of what ancient writers did time and again, creating these strange hybrid creatures like mermaids, satyrs, and manticores. In the midst of all of that invention, the Griffin was born. Across ancient civilizations like Babylon, Assyria, Anatolia, Iran, Egypt, India, and ancient Greece and other European countries, the griffin appears with the front half of an eagle and the hindquarters of a lion along with the tail, and is roughly the size of a horse. Though sometimes it is varied in imagery, and only the head and the wings were that of an eagle, and the rest of the body was that of a lion. And from time to time it was described as a hawk or a falcon instead of an eagle. Some myths and legends even say it was only the females who had wings. And we can see in art griffins who are depicted without wings, though there are other theories for why that may be that we'll dig into later. Now, the lion and eagle were incredibly important in the ancient world, because the lion was viewed as the king of beasts, while the eagle was viewed as the king of birds. Being a hybrid of two such powerful creatures, the griffin in their eyes became the most powerful. It was dubbed the king or ruler of all. These creatures were so popular in Greek myth that they were seen pulling the chariots of Apollo and Nemesis, and they were dubbed the hounds of Zeus. By association with Nemesis, they became known as protectors and arbiters of justice. Their association with Apollo, however, paired them with the sun, and in places like India, they were actually seen as sacred to the sun. Griffins were believed to have magical healing properties. Their claws could detect poison by changing color, protecting anyone who possessed such a treasure from harm. Or, I mean, not any harm, but, you know. This widespread belief led to forgeries, as one might imagine. Antelope horns were passed off as griffin claws, ostrich eggs sold as griffin eggs, and they were sold for a pretty penny back in the day. Medieval griffins symbolized watchfulness, courage, and was a guardian of treasure, though it was also a guardian of treasure in ancient times. There's a belief a rivalry existed in medieval Europe between dominant political powers over the lion and the eagle and their symbolism. The griffin, a hybrid of these two creatures, held incredible symbolic power: strength, military power, courage, intelligence, and leadership. These were held in incredible high esteem, and the griffin represented them. Why is this symbolism so important that these political parties were passive-aggressively fighting like schoolyard children over eagles and lions? There is actually a good reason. This was a time before reading and writing were commonplace. These were seen as things that belonged to the high class or priests. Yes, these political powers, most likely kings, would have most likely known how to read and write, but it doesn't change the society that they lived in at the time. Symbolism, especially through imagery, was its own type of language. Complex tapestries, embroideries, and paintings, these told intricate stories. Lions symbolized courage, nobility, royalty, strength, stateliness, and valor. Eagles were known as God's power, with speed, strength, and grace. When you had a creature that was a hybrid of two such creatures, it inherited all of their traits. Attributes such as the strength, courage, and ferocity of a lion, with the speed, vision, and intelligence of an eagle. These were incredibly attractive qualities to leaders in politics, religion, and war. To medieval Europeans, the Griffin was basically the it girl. Now I know what you're thinking. Caroline, what if we made a hybrid out of a hybrid? This might be my lucky day more than yours, because I'm really excited to tell you about the hippogriff. Hippogriffs are large, flying creatures, much like the griffin. Their front half is eagle and their back half is horse, with giant eagle wings protruding from their back, much like the griffin. They're not siblings or even cousins to the griffin. In fact, they're the child of a griffin. Invented by Italian poet Ludovico Ariosto in 1516 in his romantic epic Orlando Furioso. In this story, the very first hippogriff was invented when a mare mated with a griffin. In mythology, it was a thing thought impossible. But here was Ludovico making the impossible possible, and thus the hippogriff was born. Now, I'd love to do a video on hippogriffs, so I'm not really going to spoil a lot of their background, but I would love to talk about Ludovico for a moment. Who was he? Well, he led an interesting life. As an Italian courtier who didn't seem to like the lifestyle, but didn't really have a choice since a cardinal was his patron. His life was filled with diplomatic missions, one of which gave him an unnamed illness he never recovered from. Now, I find this part of his life one of the most intriguing bits, and I don't really know what that says about me as a person, but we're gonna breeze past that. But apparently, the Pope and Ludovico's patron were on pretty bad terms, and thus Ludovico was caught in the crossfire. Some sources say the Pope put a hit out on Ludovico. A poet. I mean, he was a courtier, but he was a poet, man. Other sources are a little looser with the terminology. The Britannica website simply says Ludovico had to escape the Pope's wrath. I mean, it sounds the same to me. In this context, if you're hiding from someone, it's probably because they want you dead. But, I mean, that's for you to decide. I'm not gonna try to influence you too much. You wanted him dead, okay? Returning back to the Griffin, though. Written between 424 and 479 BCE, the Greek tragedy Prometheus Bound, written by playwright Aeschylus, I really hope I said that right, is one of the earliest references to survive to modern day. In this passage, Prometheus is warning Io of the dangers she must face, the griffin of the northern lands being one of them. Keep watching out for griffins, hounds of Zeus who have sharp beaks and never bark out loud. One of the most famous myths is of them protecting gold veins out in the desert. They are continually assaulted by a tribe that rides horses named Arimaspians, hailing from Scythia. Pliny the Elder, a Roman from 1st century CE, describes these riders as people remarkable for having one eye in the center of their forehead. From that, I feel like we can presume the tribe of people he's talking about are in fact Cyclops, at least in myth, which made their own place in history, including an appearance in Homer's The Odyssey. At the same time as Aeschylus, in 430 BCE, Herodotus was writing his famous work, Histories, in which he writes a complete description of the myth surrounding the griffin. But in the north of Europe, there is by far the most gold. In this matter, again, I cannot say with assurance how the gold is produced, but it is said that one-eyed men called Arimaspians steal it from griffins. But I do not believe this, that there are one-eyed men who have a nature otherwise the same as other men. The most outlying lands, though, as they are enclosed and wholly surrounded all the rest of the world, are likely to have those things which we all think the finest and the rarest. So many incredible creatures exist in myth and legend, pulled from the human imagination and put into the world to create this intricate mythology we now know. Classical folklorist and historian of science Adrian Mayer has proposed griffins might have been inspired by a real-life animal, though. She believes Protoceratops, or the fossilized remains, created this myth. If you're thinking that sounds like a dinosaur, you would be right. It was a four-legged dinosaur with a beak, and its remains could have easily been found by Scythians, who weren't Cyclops, but nomadic tribes who lived in regions north of the Black Sea. If you look at their artwork, you'll find several gorgeous depictions of griffins. I'm going to link Silk Road snippets below, Mubinar shows these beautiful pieces and also explains the believed meaning behind these gorgeous art pieces. As I've covered, griffins are heavy with symbolism. In ancient Egypt, like the Sphinx, they guarded tombs, being seen as guardians of the soul. They also have interesting symbolic power with medieval European Christianity. Let's begin by explaining what a bestiary is, because it's not what it sounds like. These began being made in ancient times, but became popular in the Middle Ages. They were a compendium filled with artwork, and they told stories of nature. Animals, rocks, trees, really anything. They were usually a moral lesson of some type and reflected the belief that the world was made by God, that every single thing in the world held importance. There's one story of note wherein a pelican rips open its own chest to birth its baby. Despite some logical fallacies, it's meant to represent Jesus dying on the cross. Him being willing to give his life, his blood. The griffin is represented in the bestiary, though it's more of a Christian retelling of Greek myths than anything, but it's not like a griffin showed up in the Bible, so they only had so much to work with, I guess. For some time, though, I guess like a lot of things, griffins were believed to be pagan and even a version of the Antichrist himself. I don't know what changed their tune. Maybe on the 100th Crusade, when Muslim traders began selling them ostrich eggs and antelope horns, calling them griffin talons and eggs, the English bought this like hook, line, and sinker. King Henry Lion of Saxony himself brought one of these griffin claws back. It was actually in a museum in Germany, I think, up until like 1907. While you can't see that specific claw today, you can see a similar one. St. Cuthbert's griffin claw resides in the British Museum of London today. So, you want to go see a griffin claw. It's antelope, but hey, go see some Brits get bamboozled. I mean, they kind of deserved it, so it's funny. While griffins might not have as complex and intricate a past, filled with as many stories as other creatures and figures in mythology, they're still an intricate part of many cultures. They still influence us today, living on crests, business fronts, living as surnames and business names. They're in books, TV shows, movies. We simply cannot escape this enigmatic and complex creature. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you also to my guest stars. I hope you enjoyed their appearances. If you're not catching my drift, I'm talking about my cats. They were very noisy today. I hope you did enjoy the video though. If you did, please like and subscribe and leave your suggestion on what legend, myth, or folklore you would like me to cover next. See you next time. Bye!